The words cut through me like a knife as my sister Rachel's voice echoed across the busy downtown street. I stood frozen in place, wearing my worn-out clothes and holding a cardboard sign, watching as she pointed me out to her perfectly dressed friends from her high-end marketing firm. The shame burned in my chest, but not for the reasons she thought. My name is Victoria Chen, and what my sister didn't know was that for the past 18 months, I had been living the most dangerous double life imaginable. 6 months ago, I had graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown University with degrees in criminal justice and international relations, but instead of celebrating with my family, I had voluntarily disappeared into the shadows of Washington, D.C.'s most dangerous neighborhoods. The FBI had recruited me straight out of college for Operation Street Sweep, a classified undercover mission targeting a massive human trafficking ring that had been operating undetected for over 5 years. My cover was perfect, a homeless young woman with no family connections, no permanent address, and no reason for anyone to look too closely at my background. But standing there listening to Rachel's cruel laughter, watching her friends take pictures of me like I was some kind of zoo exhibit, I felt every ounce of sacrifice I had made over the past year and a half crashing down on me. I had missed Christmas dinner because I was gathering intelligence on traffickers who used holiday seasons to move their victims. I had skipped my college graduation because my handler needed me to maintain my cover identity. I had let my entire family believe I was a failure, a dropout, a disappointment who couldn't even hold down a minimum wage job. "Rachel, please," I whispered, but she was too busy entertaining her audience to hear me. Her friend Madison, whom I recognized from her Instagram posts about luxury vacations and designer handbags, was recording everything on her phone. "This is actually perfect content for my social media," Madison giggled. "Homeless people in DC are like, such a problem. The city should really do something about cleaning up the streets. It's so unsanitary having them around when we're trying to enjoy our lunch breaks." Rachel nodded enthusiastically. "I know, right? It's so embarrassing. Like, I work so hard to build my professional reputation, and then I have to worry about clients seeing my own sister begging on the streets. It reflects so poorly on our family. Mom and Dad are absolutely mortified. They won't even mention her name anymore at family gatherings." The irony was suffocating. While Rachel was building her professional reputation selling overpriced marketing services to local businesses, I had spent the last month infiltrating a network responsible for smuggling over 200 young women and children into the country for forced labor and exploitation. 3 weeks ago, I had personally saved a 15-year-old girl named Maria who had been kidnapped from her family in Honduras and brought to DC against her will. The intelligence I had gathered had already led to the arrest of 12 mid-level traffickers, and we were closing in on the organization's leadership structure. But my family knew none of this. They couldn't know. The moment my cover was blown, not only would 18 months of dangerous work be wasted, but the lives of dozens of victims still trapped in the system would be at risk. The FBI had made it clear from day one that maintaining operational security meant complete isolation from my previous life. No contact with family, no social media presence, no paper trail that could connect Victoria Chen, the college graduate, to the homeless woman known on the streets simply as Vicky. Rachel's friend Jessica, a real estate agent who specialized in luxury properties, looked me up and down with disgust. Has she always been like this? I mean, was there some kind of drug problem or mental illness that led to this situation? Because honestly, looking at her now, it's hard to believe you two came from the same family. That's the worst part, Rachel replied, her voice dripping with false sympathy. She actually had every opportunity to succeed. Our parents paid for her to go to college, gave her a car, supported her through everything. But she just couldn't handle adult responsibilities. She dropped out during her senior year, moved out without telling anyone where she was going, and now look at her. She's chosen this lifestyle. It's not even about circumstances or bad luck. She's actively choosing to be homeless rather than get a real job like a normal person. The lies stung worse than any physical pain I had endured during my training at Quantico. Rachel genuinely believed everything she was saying because that's the cover story the FBI had helped me construct. As far as my family knew, I had indeed dropped out of college due to personal issues and had been struggling with finding my direction ever since. The Bureau's behavioral psychologists had crafted the perfect narrative to explain my disappearance without raising suspicions that might compromise the operation. Madison suddenly grabbed Rachel's arm excitedly. "Oh my God, you should totally stage some kind of intervention. Like, get your parents involved, maybe hire a social worker or something. You could document the whole process for social media. Think about how inspiring it would be to show your followers that you're trying to help get a homeless person back on their feet. The engagement would be incredible, and it would really boost your personal brand as someone who cares about social issues." The suggestion made my blood run cold. Any kind of intervention or official involvement with social services would inevitably lead to background checks, paperwork, and questions that could unravel my entire cover identity. I had to get away from this situation immediately, but Rachel was blocking my path, and a small crowd of curious onlookers had begun to gather around us. "You know what? That's actually a brilliant idea," Rachel said, pulling out her phone. "I'm going to call Mom right now and tell her we found Victoria. Maybe if we can get her into some kind of program, she can at least learn to take care of herself properly. I mean, look at her hair, her clothes, her skin. She obviously has no idea how to maintain basic hygiene or self-respect." What Rachel didn't understand was that every aspect of my appearance had been carefully calculated by FBI specialists to help me blend seamlessly into the homeless community I was investigating. My unwashed hair, my deliberately dirty clothes, my worn-down shoes, everything had been designed to make me invisible to law enforcement while gaining the trust of both victims and perpetrators in the trafficking network. Just 3 days earlier, I had been in a luxury hotel suite in Arlington, debriefing with my FBI handler about a major breakthrough in the case. We had identified the primary money laundering operation the traffickers were using, and I had successfully photographed documents that would allow federal prosecutors to freeze millions of dollars in criminal assets. But standing on that street corner, watching my sister treat me like a social media opportunity, I felt more alone and isolated than I ever had during the most dangerous moments of my undercover work. Rachel had already started dialing our mother's number when Jessica suddenly pointed toward the end of the block. Rachel, is it just me, or are there like a lot of police cars coming this way?" I looked up to see a convoy of black SUVs with government plates approaching rapidly. My heart started racing as I recognized the vehicles from previous operations. Something was happening. My secure phone, hidden in the lining of my jacket, had been vibrating with emergency alerts for the past few minutes, but I hadn't been able to check it without breaking character in front of Rachel and her friends. The lead SUV pulled up directly beside us, and I watched in amazement as Director James Morrison himself stepped out of the passenger seat. The director of the FBI, a man whose face regularly appeared on national television and who reported directly to the Attorney General, was standing less than 10 feet away from me. Behind him emerged a team of senior agents, including my direct handler, Agent Sarah Rodriguez, and the assistant director of the Bureau's Human Trafficking Task Force. Rachel and her friends immediately started backing away, clearly intimidated by the sudden law enforcement presence. Madison was still recording with her phone, probably hoping to capture some kind of dramatic arrest for her social media followers. But instead of approaching any of the other people on the street, Director Morrison walked directly toward me. "Agent Chen," he said in his authoritative voice, extending his hand for a firm handshake. "Outstanding work on Operation Street Sweep. The intelligence you've gathered over the past 18 months has been instrumental in what I can confidently say will be the largest human trafficking bust in federal law enforcement history." The color drained from Rachel's face as she processed what she was hearing. "Agent Chen," she repeated weakly. Director Morrison continued, completely ignoring the shocked bystanders. "Thanks to your undercover work, we've been able to identify and locate 3 major trafficking hubs, 17 safe houses, and over 40 individuals involved in the organization's leadership structure. As of 6 o'clock this morning, coordinated raids in 7 cities have resulted in the arrest of 63 suspects and the rescue of 89 victims, including 23 children under the age of 16. I could see Madison's phone shaking in her hands as she continued recording, probably realizing she was witnessing something far more significant than the social media content she had been hoping for. Jessica had gone completely silent, staring at me with the expression of complete disbelief. Agent Rodriguez stepped forward with a briefcase. "Agent Chen, the president has personally requested that you be present for tomorrow morning's press conference announcing the results of Operation Street Sweep. The Attorney General will be recognizing your contributions to this case, and there's been discussion about recommending you for the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your service to victims of human trafficking." Rachel dropped her phone, which clattered onto the sidewalk. "Victoria," she whispered. Your FBI?" Director Morrison finally acknowledged the family resemblance. "I take it you're Agent Chen's sister? She's told us quite a lot about her family during our debriefing sessions. You should be incredibly proud. Your sister has spent the last year and a half living in some of the most dangerous conditions imaginable, gathering evidence that will literally save hundreds of lives and shut down a criminal organization that was generating over $50 million in illegal revenue annually." The director pulled out an official FBI badge and credential case, handing it to me with ceremony. "Agent Chen, on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the victims whose lives you've helped save, I want to personally thank you for your extraordinary dedication and sacrifice. Your willingness to completely sacrifice your personal comfort and family relationships in service of this mission represents the very best of what it means to be a federal agent." I accepted the credentials with hands that were somehow steadier than they had been all morning. "Thank you, Director Morrison. It's been an honor to serve." Rachel was staring at me like she had never seen me before in her life. But you've been homeless. You dropped out of college. You've been living on the streets for over a year." "Actually," Agent Rodriguez interjected, "Agent Chen graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown and was immediately recruited for this operation. Her homelessness was a carefully constructed cover identity that allowed her to infiltrate criminal networks that had previously been impossible for law enforcement to penetrate. She's been under deep cover for 18 months, which required completely cutting ties with her previous life to maintain operational security." Director Morrison looked at his watch. "Agent Chen, I know you'll want to reconnect with your family, but we need you back at headquarters for final debriefing within the hour. The media attention from tomorrow's press conference is going to be substantial, and we want to make sure you're prepared for the recognition you're about to receive." Madison finally lowered her phone, looking embarrassed about the content she had just recorded. I had no idea. I mean, we thought she was we didn't realize she was working for the government." Agent Chen's cover was designed to be convincing, the director replied diplomatically. The success of her mission depended on everyone, including her family members, believing completely in her assumed identity as someone who had fallen through society's cracks. The fact that you were all convinced demonstrates just how professional her work has been. Jessica cleared her throat nervously. "So when we were talking about staging an intervention and getting social services involved, that would have potentially compromised an active federal investigation and put the lives of trafficking victims at risk," Agent Rodriguez said matter-of-factly. Fortunately, Agent Chen's training prepared her to handle unexpected encounters with family members without breaking character. Rachel finally found her voice again. "Victoria, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. The things I said about you, the way I've been talking about you to Mom and Dad, to everyone we know. I thought you were. You thought exactly what you were supposed to think," I replied, finally able to speak to my sister as myself rather than as my cover identity. The FBI's behavioral specialists designed my cover story specifically to explain my disappearance without raising suspicions that might compromise the operation. You weren't supposed to be proud of me. You were supposed to be embarrassed and disappointed because that's what kept you from asking too many questions about where I was or what I was really doing. Director Morrison handed me a card with contact information. "Agent Chen, take the rest of the day to reconnect with your family. Agent Rodriguez will brief you on tomorrow's press conference and discuss your next assignment options. Based on your performance during Operation Street Sweep, you'll have your choice of several high-profile task forces, including international organized crime and counterterrorism units." As the FBI convoy prepared to leave, Madison approached me hesitantly. "Agent Chen, I recorded some of what just happened. Should I delete it? I mean, I don't want to interfere with anything official or put anyone in danger." Agent Rodriguez answered for me. The operational phase of this mission is complete, so there are no security concerns. However, I'd recommend waiting until after tomorrow's official press conference before sharing anything publicly. The Bureau's media relations team will be coordinating all information releases to ensure accuracy. After the FBI vehicles had departed, Rachel and I stood alone on the sidewalk where just minutes earlier she had been mocking me as a homeless beggar. The silence stretched between us until she finally spoke. Victoria, I don't even know how to begin apologizing for what I said about you. Not just today, but for the past year and a half. I've been telling everyone you were a failure, that you had dropped out of college, that you were choosing to be homeless rather than taking responsibility for your life. I've been so ashamed of you, and now I find out that you've been risking your life to save other people. Rachel, you don't need to apologize. You reacted exactly the way the FBI needed you to react. If you had been proud of me or supportive, if you had been telling people I was doing important work, it would have raised questions that could have compromised everything. Your disappointment in me was actually part of what kept my cover intact. She shook her head in disbelief. But the things I said today in front of my friends about you being unsanitary and embarrassing to the family. I was treating you like you weren't even human. And that's exactly how society treats homeless people every day, I replied. Living that reality for 18 months taught me more about social justice and human dignity than any college course ever could have. The people I was investigating prey specifically on individuals who have been dehumanized by society because they know no one will look for them or fight for them. Understanding that perspective made me a better agent. Rachel pulled out her phone to call our parents, then hesitated. Should I tell them everything? I mean, are you allowed to tell them what you've been doing? The operation is over, so yes. But Rachel, I need you to understand something. For the past 18 months, while you've been building your marketing career and going to family dinners and living your normal life, I've seen things that will stay with me forever. I've met children who were bought and sold like property. I've witnessed violence and exploitation that most people can't even imagine exists in this country. Coming back to normal family life isn't going to be as simple as just explaining what I was really doing. She nodded slowly, beginning to understand the magnitude of what I had experienced. What do you need from us? From the family, I mean. How can we support you now? Just be patient with me. And maybe think twice before you judge people based on their appearances or circumstances. The woman standing next to me in line at the shelter might be someone's daughter who was kidnapped and forced into prostitution. The man asking for change outside your office building might be a veteran with PTSD who can't navigate the bureaucracy required to access services. Everyone has a story, and most of those stories are more complicated than they appear on the surface. As we walked toward Rachel's car so she could drive me to FBI headquarters, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me to this moment. 18 months ago, I had been a college student worried about final exams and job interviews. Today, I was a federal agent whose work had directly resulted in the rescue of nearly 90 human trafficking victims. The sacrifices had been enormous, missing family celebrations, enduring judgment from people I loved, living in genuinely dangerous conditions, and carrying the emotional weight of witnessing unimaginable cruelty. But as I thought about Maria, the 15-year-old girl I had helped rescue just weeks earlier, and the dozens of other victims who were now free because of Operation Street Sweep, I knew that every moment of sacrifice had been worth it. Tomorrow's press conference would mark the end of my first major FBI assignment, but it was also the beginning of a career dedicated to fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Rachel glanced at me as we drove through downtown DC. So what happens next? Do you go back to being a regular FBI agent, or do you get another undercover assignment? I'm not sure yet. Director Morrison mentioned several options, including international organized crime units and counterterrorism task forces. But honestly, after 18 months of this level of intensity, I might need some time working on more conventional cases before I'm ready for another deep cover operation. She smiled for the first time since the FBI convoy had arrived. Well, whatever you decide to do next, I promise I'll never again assume I understand someone's situation based on what I can see on the surface. And I'm going to make sure Mom and Dad understand what an incredible thing you've been doing. As we pulled up to FBI headquarters, I realized that while my undercover identity as a homeless woman was over, the most important lessons I had learned during Operation Street Sweep would stay with me forever. I had gained a deeper understanding of social justice, human dignity, and the complexity of circumstances that can lead people into vulnerable situations. More importantly, I had discovered that I was capable of sacrifices and commitments I never would have believed possible. The homeless beggar my sister had been ashamed of that morning was gone, replaced by FBI Special Agent Victoria Chen. But the experiences, insights, and empathy I had gained while living that cover identity would continue to inform my work as a federal agent for the rest of my career. Sometimes the greatest victories require the deepest sacrifices, and sometimes the most important work happens in the shadows where no one can see or appreciate it. But in the end, knowing that my 18 months of isolation and hardship had directly resulted in the freedom of 89 human trafficking victims made every moment of family disappointment, every night spent in dangerous conditions, and every day of living as someone society had written off completely worthwhile. The director was right. Tomorrow's press conference would bring recognition and media attention. But the real reward was already in my heart. The knowledge that I had used my education, my training, and my willingness to sacrifice to make a meaningful difference in the world. And that was something no amount of family pride or public recognition could ever replace.